Ready, folks? Okay, I'd like to call to order. No, okay, I'd like to call to order the February meeting of the Penns Manor Board of Education. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Boston,
Here.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Here.
Mr. Hardesty,
Here.
Mr. Larch is excused, Mr. Polenic,
Here.
Mrs. Williams,
Here.
Mrs. Tate,
Here.
Mr. Packer,
Here.
myself, Mr. Johnston.
Here.
Mrs. Dolges,
Here.
Mrs. Eglin,
Here.
Mr. Grimaldi,
Here.
Mr. Dalton,
Here.
Mr. Gramling,
Here.
Mr. Saffron.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Before we move any further on the agenda, I had indicated that I wanted to say a few words about Mr. Belchik, who passed away a couple weeks ago. Mr. Belchik had served this board on this board for 21 years. And I think for most of the 21, he was either our budget and finance chair, if not all of the 21, most of those 21 years. If you know Ron as a fiscally conservative person. And because of his actions, he's really placed this district in a good financial position. But Ron wasn't always just about finances too. He made sure that the kids' education was first. So if you know Ron, you know that he was a soft-spoken person. He was willing to share his ideas and thoughts and opinions. He was an example of what you hope to find in a good board member. Mr. Belchik was also engaged in the community, and you'd also often see him at school events. This district has felt a huge void with Ron's passing. So on behalf of the board of directors, our administrators, our faculty and staff, our solicitor, we'd like to extend our deepest sympathies and condolences to Ron's wife, Antoinette. Antoinette refers to Ron as the love of her life. Well, Antoinette, I know he felt the same way about you. His daughter, Grace, husband, Ryan, and granddaughter, Vivian, and the entire Belchik family. Ron will be missed. And if you would, for another time, just share in a moment of silence for Mr. Belchik. Okay, thank you, folks. Okay, are there any presentations?
There are none this evening, Mr. Packer.
Okay, let me just make a couple comments so we follow this right. On page 4 of 5, tonight we will be appointing a school director to represent Pine Township. That name will be Mrs. Tammy Dalton. And we will take care of citizens' remarks again after the nomination for the vice president's spot. So with that, can I have a motion to approve the, I was going to say the amended agenda. So can we amend the agenda first? Can I have a motion?
So move. Second. Whatever.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty, and I still need a second.
I'll second.
Second by somebody.
Okay, and I have a second by Mrs. Williams.
Okay, any discussion? Are there any that oppose? Okay, now can we have a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
I'll make the motion. It's Jill. I'll
Thank you.
second. Debbie.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Any discussion? Okay, anybody oppose? Okay, the amended agenda is approved. At this time, we'll hear citizens' remarks if there are any.
There is one, which let me just read that aloud. Good morning. This is from Pat Clunan from the Indiana Gazette. Good morning. Per your agenda, what can be said about the person or persons filling Mr. Belchick's vacancy on the board and as board vice president?
Okay, I think what we're going to do for Mr. Clunan is, Darren, I wonder if you could call him tomorrow and fill him in with some of the information about Mrs. Dalton.
Sure, absolutely.
And we will be moving later in the agenda on the vice chair spot.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other citizens' remarks?
No.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the amended or a motion to approve the minutes?
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mrs. Williams and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Okay, are there any questions? Are there any that oppose? Okay, motion carries. The business report is included in your packet. Can we have a motion to approve the financial report as printed?
I'll make the motion. This is Jill.
I'll second.
Okay, do we have a second?
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Is there any discussion? Is there anybody that opposes? Okay, the business report will stand approved. Okay, presentation of bills. The general fund has bills totaling $287,568.88. The athletic fund, $19,088.74. Cafeteria fund, $25,377.81. Can we have a motion to authorize payment of the bills? We have a motion. Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Polenick and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Is there any discussion? Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on now to the any program updates, Mr. Johnson?
There are none, Mr. Packer.
Okay,
We
well,
have a roll call presentation of bills.
I'm sorry, I did that last time too. Can we have a roll call, Mr. Muscatello?
Yes. Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to our reports, beginning with the superintendent report. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Packer. I want to review some agenda items and then a couple additional items afterwards. First, I want to remind you under budget and finance this evening, we're asking you to approve the Aaron IU 28 general operating budget. The overall general operating budget for the next fiscal year at the IU is not increasing. However, our portion, because of enrollment and how it's calculated, is increasing by $128. So our total payment to the general operating budget for Aaron IU for the next school year will be $22,643. Under buildings and grounds this evening, we're asking you to approve a motion to hire Cannon Boiler Works Incorporated from New Kensington to service our boilers at the cost of $6,635. Under athletics tonight, we're asking you to approve 2 volunteers that will be listed on the agenda. We're also asking you to approve the resignation of track boys assistant coach 1, That resignation is from Mrs. Hudak. Mrs. Hudak served on our track team as a coach this past year. So we thank her for her service. Also asking you under transportation to approve 2 drivers. Also under policies this evening, we're asking you to adopt and approve the new policy 218.3, which is related to student convicted adjudicated of sexual assault. Also this evening, under new business, we're asking for the board to approve new phone service with Salzgiver Incorporated with a monthly fee of $834.70. That agreement will go for a 2-year period of time. Also within that same motion, asking you to approve no higher than $15,000 to purchase all the new phones that would be compatible with that system. Also this evening, we're asking as the administration that you would approve Mrs. Carly Horwat as the new special education teacher. That assignment will be in the primary. If you recall, that vacant position came about when Mrs. Prebish transferred to the elementary counselor position. Mrs. Horwat will be approved as step 3 of instructional 1 at the prorated salary of $44,509. Also this evening, we're asking, we have a FMLA request for your approval. Also asking you to approve 2 outside placements for students in the YES program at Adelphi in Indiana. We're also asking you to approve substitutes on the substitute list. Also this evening, we have on the agenda approval of the tax collectors compensation, increasing their rate beginning in 2022-23 year, 5 cents each year for 4 years. Also this evening, you'll be appointing a new school board director, along with nominating and electing a new vice president. Also, want to take a few minutes just to remind everyone as we've gone through this school year, and I just want to remind parents that would be listening this evening that all the things that we started out with this year, disinfecting, etc., all that is in place. So just let me begin and remind people things that are taking place in the morning. We started out that way at the beginning, and we continue to do that. So we have to thank a lot of people everywhere from the beginning of transportation. Please keep in mind that Tri-County Transportation, those buses are disinfected twice a day. I have to thank parents who continue to drive their students to our school district every day. That cuts down on the number of students that are on a bus. Every day, we're requiring the wearing of masks. We're taking temperatures of everybody that enters the building. Even employees are taking their own temperatures when they come in. Throughout the day, again, making sure that we're abiding by all the regulations set in place. So hats off to every employee that is in this district. I do want to say currently we only have 1 case of COVID-19 that's reported in our 14-day window that we need to take a look at. So at this point, we have seen lower numbers of cases in our district. So again, absolutely hats off to all of our students, our parents, and everyone that works in the district making that all happen. Also want to point out that on Monday is a teacher in service day, so students will not be attending school on Monday. Also want to remind parents, which you would have received notification yesterday, that we have exhausted all 4 of our snow days that was built into this school calendar. So any future day that we would need to close school due to weather related or because we would have too many COVID cases in one of the buildings, we will switch for that period of time or day to remote learning. And again, we've established what needs to take place. So hats off to everyone that's got us to that place that we can make that switch. And I appreciate, again, the support of this board for us allowing to continue in the direction that we've been going, and all of our employees, and most of all, our parents and students. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnston. Is there anything else to include under reports, federal programs, public relations?
There's not.
How about old business?
No business.
Okay, Mrs. Eckenrode, nothing under negotiations?
Nothing this evening, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Mrs. Williams, nothing under curriculum?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, under budget and finance, 14A, approve Aaron IU 28 general operating budget. Can we have a motion to approve the Aaron IU 28 general operating budget as presented for the fiscal year July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022 in the amount of $3,427,394, with the district share being $22,643. This is an increase of $128 from last year. Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode, a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Is there any discussion on the matter? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Plunick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that concludes budget and finance. We'll move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Planick.
I have one item. It's approved quote for boiler maintenance. I'd like to make a motion to approve a quote for Cannon Boiler Works Incorporated to perform maintenance to boiler system at a cost of $6,635 as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Plunick and a second by Mrs. Williams.
Okay, is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Plunick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Eckenrode, I don't like to catch you by surprise, but would you mind handling the athletic committee this evening?
No, I can do that, Bob. Thank you. Okay,
Okay,
I'm reading
thanks.
off my phone, so it's teeny weeny, but I'll do my best. Okay, item A, approve sports volunteers. I'd like to make the motion to approve the following sports volunteers for the 2020-21 school year, pending the receipt of all current clearances, cardio and impact testing, and the coaching education courses as required by PIAA. Lauren Dumb and Megan Schwartz.
Second.
Can we, thank you.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Is there any questions, discussions? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Plunick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item B, resignation of track boys assistant one coach. I'd like to make the motion to accept the resignation of Rebecca Hudak as track boys assistant one coach and to grant the administration permission to post and advertise for this position.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Williams.
Questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Plunick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr.
Thank you,
Packer.
Mrs. Eckenrode.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Okay, Mrs. Tate, transportation.
Yes, I have one item tonight. Approved drivers for the 2020-21 school year. I would like to make the motion to approve the following bus drivers and substitutes for Tri-County Transportation for the 2020-21 school year. Donald Boring and Kevin Hahn.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion by Mrs. Tate and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Are there any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That's all I have, Mr. Packer.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tate. Okay, under policies, approve and adopt policy 218.3, student convicted, adjudicated of sexual assault. Can we have a motion to approve and adopt policy 218.3, student convicted, adjudicated of sexual assault as presented? All board policies appear on the district's website. Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Is there any correspondence this evening?
There's no correspondence, Mr. Packer.
Okay, we'll move on to new business. Beginning with 20A, approved phone service agreement. Can we have a motion to approve a phone service agreement with Salzgiver Inc. in the amount of $834.70 a month for 24 months effective July 1, 2021 as attached. Further, the board authorizes the administration to expend up to $15,000 to purchase new phones compatible with the new service. Can we have a motion?
Make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Polenick and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Are there any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Under 20B, hire special education teacher. Can we have a motion to hire Carly Horwath as a special education teacher with a starting date to be determined pending release from her current employer at instructional 1, step 3 of the pay scale as set forth in the collective bargaining agreement between the Penns Manor Area School District and the Penns Manor Education Association dated August 1, 2019 through July 31, 2022, and conditioned upon and pending receipt of all satisfactory employment documentation as required by law, including but not limited to the documentation as required by Act 168 of 2014. The annual salary of this position will be $44,509 per the terms of the current collective bargaining agreement and shall be prorated for the remainder of the 2020-21 school year. Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mr. Polenick.
Are there any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Under 20C, approve FMLA request. Can we have a motion to approve the request of employee number 660 for leave under the provisions of Article 12, unpaid leaves of absence, Section 5, family medical leave of the current collective bargaining agreement between the Penns Manor Area School District and the Penns Manor Education Support Professional, the CBA, and the provisions of the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993, or FMLA, and subject to the terms of the FMLA and the current CBA for a period of time not to exceed 12 work weeks.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Tate, a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Are there any questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Williams,
yes,
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
yes,
Mr. Plenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item, outside placement approval, yes program at Adelphi. Can we have a motion to approve the enrollment of Penns Manor area student number 496799 and student number 341569 into an outside placement at Adelphi?
so moved,
Second.
Do we have a second? Thank
I
you.
have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Are there any questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Williams,
yes,
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
yes,
Mr. Plenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, approved substitute list for the 2020-21 school year. Can we have a motion to approve the following day-to-day substitutes pending receipt of all current clearances for the 2020-21 school year? Kylene Ressler as a daytime cleaner.
I'll make the
Can we have a
motion.
motion?
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Williams and a second by Dr. Boston.
Are there any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes,
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
yes,
Mr. Plenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the tax collector compensation, can we have a motion to adopt the resolution of the Board of School Directors of the Penns Manor Area School District entitled Resolution of the Penns Manor Area School District determining and establishing the compensation for the office of elected tax collector for collection of certain taxes imposed and levied by the Penns Manor Area School District, which resolution determines and establishes the compensation for the office of elected tax collector as set forth in the resolution, a copy of which has been provided to the members of the Board of School Directors, and which resolution is incorporated into this motion in the minutes of this meeting as though more fully set forth herein. Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion,
I'll second.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Tate.
Okay, are there any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams,
yes,
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
yes,
Mr. Plenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, appoint school board director. Can we have a motion to appoint Mrs. Tammy Dalton, a qualified elector of the district, as a member of the Board of School Directors of Penns Manor Area School District to fill a vacant position for Region 3 encompassing Pine Township due to the death of Ronald Belchick. The newly appointed board member shall hold office until the first Monday of December after the next municipal election, which is the first Monday of December 2021. Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
second,
Are there any questions?
Hold on. I have a motion by Mrs. Tate and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Okay, are there any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams,
yes,
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
yes,
Mr. Hardesty,
yes,
Mr. Polenick.
Yes, majority, yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, nominations. At this time, we'll take nominations for Vice President of the Board of School Directors. The office of Vice President of the Board of School Directors is vacant due to the death of Mr. Ronald Belchick. In accordance with Board Policy Number 5, a vacancy in any office of the board shall be filled by board election, and such officers shall serve for the remainder of the unexpired term of that office. Moreover, the election shall be by a majority vote of those present and voting. So at this time, I will take nominations for the position of Vice President.
I would like to nominate John Hardesty.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, if there's no other nominations, okay, we have a motion and we have a second.
Just a point of order. Do we need a motion and a second on the nomination?
No.
So we're gonna proceed to.
If there are no other nominations, the board president can close the nominations. Then we have to pause for citizens' comments.
That's right. Okay, if there are no other nominations, I will close them and ask for any citizens' remarks. We will just take a couple minutes to make sure if any comes in, we can take care of that. Dave? We're okay.
What he's saying is there's about a 30-second delay, so it seems like you need to leave about a minute and a half.
Okay, we're going to move on then to election of board vice president. We do have a motion then, is that correct?
Well, you need a motion
Okay, okay, we do need a motion then.
to elect John Hardesty as vice president.
Did everybody hear that? To elect Mr. Hardesty as board vice chair, vice
I'll make the
president?
motion.
So can we have a, thank you.
Sorry, who was that?
Second.
Was the motion by Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Tate and a second by Dr. Boston.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams,
yes,
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes,
Mr. Hardesty,
yes, or I abstain, whichever is allowed.
Mr. Hardesty, you're allowed to vote in as much as that position is not a paid position.
Oh, it's not.
so
No, I'll vote yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Hardesty, I think.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to student recognition. PMEA Student of the Month for February is Sarah Brown. All Gazette 2020 football team, first team, Dimitri Lieb and Jay Carlinzi. Second team, Reese Hayes, Austin Hill, Connor Keith, and Ashton Corvina. An honorable mention, Justin Marshall, Ethan Joyner, Nathan Raphael, Kevin Baum, Ty Fennel. 2020-21 Heritage Conference. Marching band, Connor Antonio and Autumn Kramer. Football, Kevin Baum, Reese Hayes, and Connor Keith. Cross country, Jared Bowman and Savannah Orner. And volleyball, McKenna Bothell. Our congratulations to all of these students for their efforts. Okay, under 21, request field trips or conference. Can we have a motion to approve the following field trips that were attached? Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, can we have a second?
A second.
I have a
Thank you.
motion by Mrs. Tate and a second by Mr. Hardesty.
Any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate,
Yes.
Mr. Packer,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we have our next committee meeting is March the 4th at 7 o'clock, and the next business meeting, March the 11th at 7 o'clock. And I do know that we have a number of other committee meetings that we'll have related to budget, athletics, and a number of other things. So is there any other business that needs brought before this board this evening? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Everybody have a nice Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Again, Mrs. Williams' birthday is the 29th. So if you don't have the 29th on your calendar, you might want to drop a note or call